Council?
Jeff Van Arsdale, Benton County Sheriff.
Lillian Ethel, Board of Commissioners staff.
Teresa Farley, Board of Commissioners staff.
Melissa Rash, Public Information Officer.
Suzanne Hoffman, Health Department Director. April Holland, Public Health. All right, I see a few other people on the line. Would the guests in the room like to introduce themselves?
This is Scott, City of Adair Village.
Hi, I'm Alexis Biddle with Northampton Friends of Oregon.
Peggy Lynch, Benton County.
Ron Weidel, the owner.
And I see someone named Tim, perhaps. Oh, there we go. Is muted now. All right. We can go ahead and get started. And I'm realizing now that Suzanne usually starts the meeting by an acknowledgement that this land used to belong to the indigenous peoples. And I probably should have been better prepared for that. But I'll just stumble my way through. You know, our white ancestors, you know, put into motion systems of oppression that many of us white people still benefit from today. And it's up to us to dismantle those systems of oppression where we can. And then I'd also like to start the meeting by saying how much I appreciate everybody who is on this call today. Thank you for being here. Let's see, next on the agenda, we have comments from the public. Do we have any public comment today?
This is Peggy Lynch.
Anybody? Hi, Peggy, go ahead.
Thanks, Commissioner. I hadn't planned on making the comment and had not paid attention to the agenda that I would be able to. I do have concerns about the Adair Village, that I noticed that you had a motion that could occur today, and it seemed to me like I had not seen anything on the previous agendas that would have allowed the public to have a conversation before you actually make a motion to begin the process for this project. So I'm just sharing a concern.
Thank you, Peggy. All right, is there anyone else who would like to testify today? We do public comment? All right, hearing none, I think we can move on. We are going to review and approve the agenda. And I know that the county administrator would like to add one topic to our agenda today.
Good morning, Commissioner. Again, that's correct. I'd like to add an item under new business as item number 6.5. The topic would be discussion and decision regarding financial requests from Corvallis Housing First to assist with remodel costs for the 3rd Street Commons.
All right, we will add that. Is there any other additions? Hearing none, I think we can consider that approved. Let's move into the work session. First item up, I have update from Department Operations Center with Suzanne Hoffman and April Holland from our health services. Hello, Suzanne.
Good morning. As you know, we put this update back on your agenda every other week, or first and third Tuesdays anyway, because not long ago, the information started changing ever more frequently as the Delta variant and the surge of cases and the surge within our hospital systems continue to rise. Our commitment is to keep you informed of the latest information as we understand it, both from the data perspective and any recommendations you might be seeking or that we might feel compelled to bring forward. I'll turn it over to April, who can update you on any new information that we have since the last time we were here.
Thank you, Suzanne, and good morning, commissioners and all. Today I'll give a brief update on where we're at with cases, hospitalizations, and deaths, as well as talk a little bit about the latest in COVID vaccinations. Our cases are still very high. Statewide, it does appear, that the curve surge is starting to round the corner. However, our cases totaled 171 in the past week, down from just eight more cases the week before. Our 7-day case rate is at 181 per 100,000, and anything over 100 is considered high community transmission. And our 14-day case rate it was 370 per 100,000, indicating that very high rate of community transmission continues. Our positivity rate is at 7.1%, which continues to be among the lowest among counties in the state. This reflects a high volume of testing, which is a good thing, as it allows us to detect cases and implement isolation and quarantine, which helps to break the cycle of transmission and reduces the number of new cases. So that low positivity rate, relatively low positivity rate, is a very good thing. We're seeing a lot of outbreaks right now, and at the moment there are a lot of outbreaks in K through 12 schools. School just started, and COVID is present. We have several classrooms and some buses quarantined across the county. And we know that university classes start tomorrow, and we do expect to continue to see high numbers of cases as move-in testing results return. In terms of hospitalizations, hospitalizations remain high in many areas. They are overall decreasing statewide. Some of that may have something to do with improving step-down capacity, so more space in long-term care facilities, releasing a bottleneck so that people can be discharged to the care that they need. Yesterday's local hospital census included 26 COVID patients at Good Samaritan Regional Medical Center, and they've had a 7-day average of 24 a day. Alarmingly, today's hospital capacity numbers included 0 of 95 available ICU beds in Region 2. That's Benton, Lincoln, Marion, Polk, and Yamhill. 0 staffed ICU beds available. And 4 total of 705 staffed non-ICU beds available in our region. Of course, this affects COVID care as well as other types of needed care. I urge everyone to keep safety in mind. Now is not the time to engage in risky behaviors. Regarding deaths, unfortunately, right now, you may have heard in the news about 2,000 people in the U.S. are dying from COVID disease every day. We learned here in Benton County of 5 additional deaths in the past week. While the number of death reports in this last week is higher than at any other point during the pandemic, including during the initial outbreaks at long-term care facilities in the spring, spring of last year, the actual dates of death are spread over a wider time frame. However, the overall rate of death in the last month is the highest at any point during the pandemic. We know that hospitalizations and deaths are lagging indicators of COVID, So even as cases start to decrease, which hopefully will happen very soon, we're at sort of at a plateau right now. We will continue to see hospitalizations and perhaps deaths for weeks after that decline begins. In terms of vaccination, just very quickly, we maintain really very active in supporting vaccination events. We supported 2 events at schools last week. This Friday, we're supporting an event hosted by the Coalition of Graduate Employees. We've got 10 additional high school or school events coming up at high schools around the county, 5 next week, and then 5 more 3 weeks later. And we'll continue to provide food boxes and $100 gift cards as incentives for those. Vaccines in plentiful supply in pharmacies and providers' offices as well. There's been so much discussion of booster doses in the news, and just want to give you a brief update on where that is. We know vaccination is currently approved for first doses and second doses for Pfizer and Moderna, and then the 1-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine. There's a 3rd dose of the initial series approved for people who are moderately to severely immunocompromised, and that's again, a part of that initial series. Moving on to a booster dose hasn't been approved yet. FDA and ACIP, the Advisory Committee on the Immunizations Practices, met last Friday to determine that guidance on boosters for Pfizer vaccine. And at that meeting, they didn't recommend Pfizer booster for all people at 6 months past the 2nd dose. But they did agree that the available data support that people age 65 and older and people at high risk for severe disease should receive a booster dose at least 6 months after that 2nd dose. So that was the first step in a longer process. The next step is that that recommendation is turned into guidance. So tomorrow and Thursday, FDA will meet again with ACIP, the advisory committee, and then the CDC director will consider that ACIP recommendation and make any official CDC recommendation for the use of boosters. So we anticipate that additional guidance will come by the end of this week after FDA and CDC decide there are more steps, and ultimately OHA will make a recommendation, and we may see a clear booster recommendation here in Oregon by early next week. Planning efforts have been underway in anticipation of the guidance announcement. We've been doing a lot of planning around booster and the coming youth vaccination. We've been looking closely at local capacity and developed estimates of need for when boosters and youth vaccination come into play. I briefly mentioned at our last meeting that Samaritan initially had planned to partner on 2 mass vaccination sites, one at the coast and one in the valley. The site they chose in Lynn County experienced some late notice availability issues and will have much less capacity than initially planned. So we are in active planning for exploring potential mass vaccination sites in Corvallis. And when I say mass vaccination site, I don't mean at the same scale as we saw previously at Reser. This will be more like a medium-sized clinic, 1 to 2 days a week as needed, just to fill that gap between supply and demand. So we're in frequent communications with Samaritan and OSU. We're finalizing a site right now. We're also discussing immediate demands. As I said, we're looking at capacity, and those estimates really vary a lot at what the need may be, depending on what that guidance may look like. So, for example, if CDC and OHA approve all healthcare workers to be included in the booster, then our demand will be immediate and pretty large, because a lot of healthcare workers receive Pfizer very early in the vaccine rollout. So we're working on, how we can be immediately responsive to the need, and how we can sort of use our data week by week to determine what we need to stand up. Again, I think that we don't have a need at this time to stand up an emergency operations center for this. Everyone, all the partners understand that our resources are much more limited this time around, and we are not looking at a large scale event. This will be a medium-sized clinic and will fill a temporary gap. I think that's all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, April. I appreciate you sharing that sobering information with us. Any questions for April? Pat?
First a comment that I really appreciate you and your team's flexibility and trying to keep on top of ever-changing and sometimes confusing information coming out at the federal level. But I'm comforted that we have you folks in place sorting through the information and giving us the straight scoop, I guess. Let's see. We had a little conversation at the end of last week about testing capacity. After months of pretty quiet on the testing front, there's been a lot of discussion of, just like OSU, U of O, getting into events, you either have to have proof of vaccination or a very recent test. I guess my concern was as more tests are being required, school starting up, requiring some part of the workforce to either be vaccinated or test. How's the local/regional testing capacity?
Thank you, Commissioner. Great question. Testing, as we know, is it's an incredibly important component of our response. And yes, we will see much more need for testing. In some areas, tests are required to enter a facility here. It's one of the options for attending sporting events and among other things. Here in Benton County, our testing capacity is good at this time and is anticipated to continue to be adequate. We've had increases in testing. We've always conducted a lot of testing here in Benton County, which is fantastic. Thus far, our local partners have not had issue handling the increase with screening testing with K through 12 schools, as well as the very beginnings of OSU screening testing. We're seeing turnaround times that are impressive, 24 to 36 hours at this time. I can't promise that they'll continue to be quite so short, but those are very good testing turnaround times, given the amount of testing that we're doing. We've heard a lot about rapid antigen tests, the at-home tests. Recently, they've been around for a while, and since the surge due to Delta began, they've become quite scarce. And we heard in President Biden's plan that making rapid antigen tests much more widely available will be part of the coming response. I've noted, just anecdotally, that already you can now find those Binex rapid antigen home tests online and in pharmacies where just a week or so ago they couldn't be found. there is an issue with cost. Part of that federal plan is to have those tests be offered at cost, and many to be provided at no cost in certain circumstances. So we're hoping that that sort of testing will be increased. There are limitations with the rapid antigen tests. They don't detect virus as well in asymptomatic individuals. However, it is a very widely used testing format, and I think that it's it's inevitable that it'll be much more widely used here as well as across the country.
Okay, thank you. Does the rapid test qualify for getting into OSU events, or is the needle test, I guess, swab, more accurate, and is that the one that's required?
That's been under discussion, Commissioner. I can't speak to any recent changes to that policy. I know initially it needed to be either a PCR or a rapid test done at a provider's office, but I'll have to get back to you on the latest. So much is changing quickly. We haven't spoken in a few days about it.
Okay, thank you. And my second question was, and I appreciate early in your report talking about the 7% positivity rate. Sounds like, did you say Benton County has the best in the state at this point?
It's very low. There's one that has the same, but it's a very small county that does little testing and has a small population.
The rest of the question is, I see mainly in GT comparing Lynn and Benton counties' infection rates, and it seems like for the last 6 weeks or so, Lynn County's rate has been routinely 3 or 4 times Benton County's rate, and I also asked this question last week. I've got your answer. I could read it, but I'd rather have you, because it had a little slightly different information than what I already had, but just kind of explaining the differential rates between the 2 counties.
Sure, Commissioner, I'd be happy to touch on that. So, just looking at I just want to acknowledge first that the public health leadership and people in Lynn County are doing a fabulous job under extremely difficult circumstances. I'm just going to look at the fully vaccinated rate among the populations of each county. Lynn County has about a 48% fully vaccinated rate, and Benton County has about a 65% fully vaccinated rate. And this rate of vaccination simply will allow for more opportunities for the virus to infect people. Vaccines aren't perfect, but most vaccinated people who do get exposed won't get infected, while people who are completely vulnerable to the virus have a good chance of being infected when they're exposed. So when a person's unvaccinated and is infected, they are more likely to transmit virus, and for a longer period of time, relative to someone who's vaccinated, who will clear the virus more quickly. Overall, in a highly vaccinated community, the virus will continue to try to circulate, and it will hit more dead ends. And in a community with less vaccination, the virus will find more people to infect, who will transmit more virus and find more people to infect, and circulation continues.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that last part. It helps explain how the virus works and why vaccines and masks are so important, especially as school starts up and there's just more indoor activity going on, especially as we ease into the fall here and we tend to spend more time inside. But thank you for that nice and clear explanation.
Anytime.
All right, any other questions or comments for April or Suzanne? Joe?
Thank you, Commissioner. April, the question I have for you is you referred to 4 deaths in the last week. Can you refresh my memory how many total deaths we've had in Benton County to date?
Yes, Joe, I'd be happy to. My computer is opening at 28. I wanted to say 27, but unfortunately the total number is 28. So there actually have been 5 reported in the last week. We learned of another death this morning. I'm sorry to bring that in this format, but.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you so much, April and Suzanne. If there's no more questions or comments for you guys, for you wonderful people, then we will move along to the next agenda item. Thank you. Let's see, next agenda item, 4.2, discuss a Dare Village urban growth boundaries, UGB expansion with Benton County and legislative action. And it looks like we have Pat Deppa, Community Development, Pat Harris, City of Dare Village, and I see Greg Barrett. Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'll lead it off and then hand it over. Pat Deppa is here as county staff and also as our planner representing City of Adair Village. Pat Harris, as City Administrator for Adair Village, also is here to discuss this topic with you. And I'll just start it off by saying the reason this comes before you is there's a request from the City of Adair Village and from a couple of property owners for the county to join with the city in initiating legislative amendments to the comprehensive plan that would allow the City of Adair Village urban growth boundary to expand and then for additional land to be annexed into the city in order to meet the city's 20-year supply needs for housing land. Pat Deppa and Pat Hare will get into the details of why that's important and the nuts and bolts of it. You're not deciding on expanding the UGB today. The point to you is what process to use to consider that urban growth boundary expansion. So I'll turn it over to Pat here, and then after they've presented, I'll talk through some of the considerations about legislative versus what other approaches could be taken, and then you can decide or ask any questions you have. So I'll turn over to Pat Deppa.
Pat, you're muted.
Hi, sorry about that. Good morning. It's good to see you all. It's been a while. This request to initiate the legislative action is in the amended county comprehensive plan and zoning map. The direct response to the city need to be in compliance with Oregon State Statute 196.296, which requires local government to demonstrate compliance that their comprehensive plan provides for a sufficient amount of buildable land within their UGB to accommodate 20 years, an estimated housing need of 20 years. So currently the city is not in compliance with the statute. So in June of this year, Portland State University came out with, they released their new estimated population projection growth for the next 20 years. They do it every 3 years, so it kind of shifts every 3 years a little bit and gets updated. And Adair Village's population is projected to increase to over 1,100 people from where it is currently right now, which places them far under that buildable land available inventory to meet the state statute. So the recent residential developments in Adair Village have removed over 45 acres of the city's current residentially zoned inventory. So that kind of put us in this position right now, and why it's been, we were kind of waiting on these numbers from Portland State University to come out with them in this past June. So the city has continued to be in contact with the landowner that sold the developer of Callaway Creek, the land for the first 4 phases of his property. It is actually half of, was half of his property. The other half of the property goes down all the way to Crane Road and out to 99 West, which is roughly about 42 acres more of land. He is interested in selling that land. The developer is interested in buying that land. So that's kind of been in the works for a while. There's another individual that's interested in being annexed, as Greg said. He owns 13 acres, which is located in the northeast section of the town, just north of Adair Park. And so the city, knowing that these individuals, what's going on with the population projection, these individuals wanting to be annexed, the city's been very proactive in meeting with the developers, the landowners, Greg Barrett, the landowners consultants, Pat here, myself, and our DLCD rep. We've had over a half a dozen meetings, kind of going through the process and what a city the size of Adair Village would have to go through to accomplish this. So, as was mentioned, there'd be a lot of work for this. I've never done this before. I've heard it's one of the most complicated things, but that most of the work that is going to be done. So we mentioned the developers and landowners have secured a consultant, and the consultant would be working for both of the property owners, and they'd be doing most of the work, most of the background work, research, establishing the findings for this, preparing exhibits. We've already got them in contact with the county's GIS coordinator. So it would be really the same amount of work that would be required if you went the quasi-judicial route. But in this case, that we have all the support. We have the DLCD representative that's been in those meetings, as I said, that is in full support of this. He understands the need. He understands the landscape and what's going on for housing needs, especially in Benton County. So having the city being on board, the city council, Pat Hare, all the work that he's done, the state, the LCD, having the county support to go along with this would really take us a long way in getting this done. So that's really kind of where we're at. I included a map with the agenda items so you can see the 2 properties. Again, one is south of the current Callaway Creek development, south of Riles Road. The other one is a piece that actually does have access subdivision. Both properties have access to public facilities, water, sanitary, storm, so they're in good shape to be annexed. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. Pat Harris here. And I know it could definitely bring some more perspective to this topic.
Yeah, thanks, Pat and Greg. So yeah, really what we're asking here for, the short gist of this is support from the county. The city needs to meet the statewide planning goals. This property, the larger property is the big one in question. The north one is actually 5 acres that would be buildable land, which was a property owner that wanted to be included in this process. The property to the south, if you can see that map, it shows this jagged line UGB, which the reason for that is this was actually approved back in '09, but it did not have the population need, and so this land was broken in half. This is a single property owner, so we're not going into new resource land. This is the property that's currently being developed right now, broken in half. And so what we're looking to do is to, like I said, meet our statewide planning goals and to partner with the county because this process is very daunting. UGB is in Oregon. This is not a small process. And so what we're looking to do as a small city is get the support of the county. And the way that we can do that is by doing this legislatively together. And that shows that the county actually supports the city doing it. I'm actually kind of glad this didn't happen back in 2009. I don't feel the city was ready then. Now we have updated comp plans, building codes, land use development codes. The city's infrastructure back then was not in a good place. It is in amazing shape now. With our sewer, we're building a new sewer plant. We have capacity to serve up to 50,000 more people with water. And so we're in a very good place right now citywide. And then the other thing is the city our size isn't required as much as the city is, say, Corvallis in requirement to do this process. So you'll hear some people say, oh, they need to do these analyses and hit all these different areas. Well, we're under 10,000 people, so we don't necessarily have to do that. You'll get a little more scrutiny because you don't, but that's where the city is asking the county to make a decision. And again, I want to clarify, this is not a decision to approve the UGB. This is a decision to support us going through this process. We will still have to go through all the public hearings and all of those different avenues that we got to do to approve the UGB. But this would remove some barriers and it would show your support. I'll be very honest, there's going to be people that are going to say that may be questionable. Does the county want to support this? And my answer to that is look at the smart development we've had. Look at the demand we have for housing. Our development built 170 homes in 3 years, completed, lived in, and 70% of the people that we have documented are from Corvallis. So we're obviously meeting housing. And we've done this, and it's very smart as well. So, what they're proposing is we're proposing to do a UGB, which is a requirement of the state, and we have a developer, a landowner willing, and they've been amazing to work with. Anything we've asked, they've done, and they want to continue building into phases 5, 6, 7, and 8, which is exactly how the city has planned how to develop for the last 20 years. That we cannot go any other direction. So that would be a question is, why are you going south? Well, again, I told you it's the same landowner that his property was broken out. And if you go to the west, you hit 99, which we're not going to be crossing 99. If you go to the east, you hit prime farmland, 400, 500 acre farms, and you cross the railroad track. If you go to the north, you hit E.E. Wilson. So I doubt we're going to be developing there. So this is really our only option. We've been in constant contact with the LTD. They're in full support. They think this is a lockdown. We're actually crossing all our T's, dotting our I's by meeting with them several times before we've even got to this point. But now we're to this point. Now we're to this point where it's like, okay, we need to start submitting our applications and getting this process going. We'd really like to see this current developer stay in the Dare Village because, again, like the reasons I stated. And so, yeah, so the city today is asking, if the the county will support us in just going through the process. That's our only ask right now. So if you have any questions of me, I can answer anything as well.
Thank you very much, Pat, and thank you, Pat. I do have a few questions just to make sure that I understand all the ins and outs, and I see that Commissioner Malone has a question too. My first question is, hypothetically, if we were to choose not to initiate this project as a legislative county-sponsored project or process, what would the other options or path forward be for the project to be initiated?
Great question, and Commissioner Wise, that's where I was headed with my summing up as well. So the options are to initiate this legislatively, meaning that there's no true applicant. It's the county and the city jointly considering this in your role as legislative body for the county. The other option is that an applicant, a property owner, can apply to the city and or to the county as they would for a conditional use permit or a subdivision or anything. The difference with an application to amend the comprehensive plan is that unlike those other types of land use applications, an application to amend the comprehensive plan is not subject to the 150-day time limit or 120-day time limit, depending. Anyway, it's not subject to a time limit which the city and county are otherwise obligated to reach a final decision on. And so what that effectively means is that whether we go legislative or applicant-driven, application-driven, there is not a statute-specified time period in which we have to accomplish, reach a final decision. So that is the other option.
Thank you. And Commissioner Malone, why don't you ask her question? Maybe it's the same one I have.
Pat here. There's a lot. I've never seen so many Pats in one meeting. I'm thrilled, but on the Waggle property, back here, you were mentioning the squiggly line in our packet to the north is the current development, but I didn't quite understand. So the blue area is numbered 926. Was that originally included in the 08 UGB expansion?
Yeah, so over to Highway 99 and down to Crane Lane was originally included in the first UGB expansion, where we did not meet the housing needs analysis of population projections at that time. Now we way exceed the need now. But that's why the property, I don't know why the boundaries were built like that. It made for a hard development, so we just actually developed that first development. That's a good point, Pat, is that first development, we actually developed with roads going into the next part of the Waggle property, with infrastructure going into the next part of the Waggle property, because, I mean, the money that we saved doing that, but we had to do that also because the house was broken up. And so, yeah, our roads dead end into the Waggles property to the south, our infrastructure dead ends to there, all of our drainage is planned for that land. So, yeah.
And you said 42 acres. How much of that is buildable?
The 40, there's a little bit of wetlands to the south, but we weren't really including that. I mean, I guess we are considering all wetlands buildable at this time, unless it's significant wetlands where we can't, and there's only a piece to the south. So I guess, yeah, we're looking at, Dare is working with the LTD to make sure that we're looking at all options to mitigate those if need be. And there's only a couple if we have to.
Okay, and I've talked to you before about alternative transportation. I'm concerned about just more cars on Highway 99, especially heading south to Corvallis. I know there's some Corvallis Transit that gets there, and I guess I would hope as development occurs that gets to be more more robust, more frequent, and at some point a path. We're calling them community connections now, path from the wonderful Corvallis system head north, maybe along 99W to Adair, which is right across from Macon Forest, which gets a lot of activity. But so if this does go forward, I would like continued conversations about what kind of paths within Adair Village and how they might connect to Highway 99W. I know there's been some, like at some meeting we've had some kind of crossing from there across 99W to the west, and so I would hope these ideas are continue to be part of the discussion.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I'm glad Laurel Byer's on as well. But I think Adair Village, especially for a small city, is above and beyond in that regard, because first of all, we're involved in the TSP with Benton County, which we were very active in with Laurel, which included a lot of those connections, but we're also doing a trails plan right now that includes that. And then on any of our development, we're requiring above and beyond really on Riles Road, especially all bike lanes, pedestrian, footpaths, and we're doing that all throughout our community. And actually we had a grant, we're doing a full trails plan that we're almost done with right now. And then I spoke with many different groups about connectivity from Corvallis and to Albany, as well as talked with you, Pat, about that. We're looking at all those ways we can make when you come into our town, that we receive those tabs and we support the ones getting to here. So yeah, and Laurel just hopped on a little bit, but I think she can help explain that a little better.
Yeah, I was here listening in. Good morning, by the way, everybody from here. I was listening in and distracted, and then I heard Pat say my name, and I went, what's going on? So, I apologize at that moment. I wasn't seeing it. But no, I know Pat Hare, the City of Adair Village has definitely worked really closely with us on the transportation system plan and development, and has always been inviting myself to work, like you said, on the trail development plan through Campo. And they're definitely concerned about traffic needs out there. And I know that ODOT has been a part of those conversations as well. Maybe a little reluctantly as far as any kind of traffic signals would go. But yeah, I think as development occurs out there, the conversation will continue to happen. I know that Lee Lazaro is working really hard on transit out in there, and so, I'm not quite sure, he's no longer working for the county, so we still have those, what's it called, the connector, right, that goes out to Adair. And so those are still like really good programs that we want to continue with I know with the continued growth and expansion of Adair, I think those programs will just also continue and grow. So.
Thanks, Laurel.
Thank you, Laurel. So my next question, this might be a great question, but could you please refresh my memory, and then also maybe for anyone who's going to watch this recording later or at home watching on Facebook, could you just go briefly over the process? If we initiate this, what due diligence is going to be done, when and how can the public weigh in during the process?
Very good question. So my understanding, having not been directly involved in a urban growth boundary expansion that's over, but being peripherally involved in the previous one and having discussed it with Pat and others. So the staff at both city and county, which in this case will be Pat Zappa, will review the materials that have been prepared relative to the state administrative rules regarding expansion of an urban growth boundary. We'll have input and advice from our representative from the Department of Land Conservation and Development, and then a staff report prepared for the planning commissions of each body. And those two bodies will have public hearings. Members of the public can testify orally or in writing at those public hearings or prior to. And then, I'm not sure on the city side, but on the county side, the planning commission either makes a recommendation of approval to the Board of Commissioners, and then the matter comes to you for another public hearing, or the planning commission on the county side can deny reject the proposal. That's if it's an application. I think if it's a legislative matter, the county planning commission simply forwards a recommendation on whether to approve or modify or not approve. So then there's a subsequent hearing at the Board of Commissioners and City Council level. I believe that might be a joint meeting, or at some point there's an opportunity for a joint meeting if there are differences to work out between the City Council approved version and the Board of Commissioners approved version. But there will be at least 2 public hearings on both city and county sides for members of the public to be engaged with.
Okay, thank you, Greg. And the way I understand this is the county's responsibility, or the county's role in this is just to initiate the program and then get through with just expanding the UGB. When it comes to the annexation, that will be all the city of Adair, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I would go ahead, Pat. Then I would like to add a couple of considerations for you to think about.
Go ahead, Greg.
Okay, so as you're considering whether to initiate this legislatively, one consideration is the principle involved and whether in concept does the board support this, and if you have concerns about supporting it in general, then you might want to review this more as something coming from an applicant, where it's not the county supporting, the county sponsoring this. But if in principle you do support it, then county sponsoring, county co-sponsoring along with the city is an appropriate way to go. One other thing I'll point out is that with an application-driven process, we get an application fee, so that offsets some of the costs. But honestly, the fee is not my concern. My concern is actually more on timing and workload. So for county staff, Pat will be doing the majority of the work, but it will also impact myself and others in our department. And it's not insurmountable. We certainly can find a way to fit this in with everything else. But right now my time is focused on the priorities of the Community Wildfire Protection Plan and implementing or participating in the team implementing the HOPE housing and sheltering recommendations. And so I'm spread pretty thin, and this will take a fair bit of my time as well. So there's an impact to taking on these projects. The board needs to know that, and that there will be some trade-offs needing to be made if we go this route. But if you feel it's a high priority, we'll make it work. So I just wanted to point those things out.
Greg, if it helps, there's one thing I just want to say to that about is that we are doing one thing different. Is normally legislatively, the staff would be preparing all the findings. We are not asking the county to do that. We are paying a private third-party contractor to do most of the work for the county to find all the findings. So whether it be applicant-driven or legislative, the county would still have to be reviewing those to make sure they met the requirements. So hopefully that will help a little bit. And the city is paying for part of that. So hopefully that can help your staff out there.
Thank you. Commissioner Malone, did you have another question or opinion?
I just wanted to point out that we had a couple questions in the chat. I guess I'll read. Packet says the Dare Village has adopted a new zone with increased density. What is that zone?
We recently, so we've been working with the LCD, like I said, and they like to see infill, and they like to see higher density development than what our current code allows for. And so our city wanted to work with the state and recognize that we have some properties that could be a little denser, so we adopted an R4 cottage cluster zone. And so we're looking at different housing types, but to be allowed outright. That's what the state goals are really meant to do, is to not prevent, to develop a code and then be able to prevent it. And so what we did is develop an R4 zone, which is cottage cluster, and it'll allow for different type and a little denser housing.
Okay, thank you. And this is from Peggy Lynch. Would like a week's postponement so some of us can review this request. It's not only 1,100 population increase units, but what kind of units serving what kind of demographic. We asked about, in the past, about school site, and need to talk to the school district, for instance.
We're not at that place. We're not looking at any of that at this moment. We're not even proposing a development at this time. So we're looking at a UGB. So that would come up when we have the proposed development.
Okay, so that's what I was going to add is Peggy's concerns could be addressed at a later date. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Malone. Any other items in the chat or questions or comments before I share my opinion? Here, okay, no. So I support this. I support initiating a process. I believe that this is one of our roles. It's one of our jobs as the county. And it's one of our jobs to support our partners, the incorporated areas within the county. So, yeah, I support this. Commissioner Malone, do you have thoughts?
Oh, of course. I agree with going forward. I am concerned about traffic and making sure we have alternatives to one person driving a 3,000 or 4,000 pound vehicle to get to work or school. But I think those concerns can be joined with this proposal as the work goes forward. So if you're ready, I will make a motion.
Yes, please.
I move to initiate the legislative process to amend the county's comprehensive plan map and zoning map to expand the city of Adair Village's urban growth boundary.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pat Hare, Pat Deba, Greg Barrett, Laurel, thank you so much for coming today, and congratulations, I'm excited.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate the thorough investigation and information that you presented us today.
Thanks for the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
So before we move on to our next agenda item, I'm just going to call for a quick 5-minute break. So we will come back, sorry Nick, we'll come back at 10:06.
Erica, can you please make me presenter when you return? Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you. That was my first question, Erica. So Commissioner Malone said there were questions in the chat. Did you see those questions in the chat? Or she sent them directly? Or sending them directly to Commissioner Malone?
Privately, yeah.
Because that's the only thing I can think of, because I try to keep an eye on the chat when I was going out. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I was wondering too.
o'clock. So we can come back together for discussion and update on Justice System Improvement Program with Nick Kurth, our adjacent project manager. Hi, Nick.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner White, Commissioner Malone. I'm actually joined today by Alyssa Rash and Julie Pfister, and Jamie Glass is part of the kind of this team as well. She's on vacation today. Most of today's presentation is going to focus on our public engagement process today and findings, and Alyssa, Julie, and Jamie really are the folks that pulled that presentation together. I just wanted to quickly review this timeline to remind us all why we're here and what's coming. And so shared this last week with you. Today we are reviewing preliminary public engagement findings there at 9:21. Then next Tuesday we'll present the final engagement findings to date. Obviously the public engagement process is going to continue through mid-October. But we'll present everything that we have next week, and then we would like to start a discussion about kind of site selection relative to the west site and the south site. Then we'll meet again on 10/5 to continue that site discussion and potentially reach a preliminary, to make a preliminary agreement. Have our second large public meeting on 10/13, and then come back together on 10/19 and make a final decision on the site selection process. So there's kind of two parallel things going on here. One, we're sharing public engagement findings, which are broad and address the entire program. The other is to make a single decision, an important decision relative to the Justice System Improvement Program. And so with that, let's go ahead and transition to our presentation today, if we may. We can go ahead and go to the next slide, if you would, please. Thank you. I think most of you have heard the presentation, are very familiar with the vision. I do want to share that, our vision of treatment and accountability does seem to be resonating with the public. I will say we are delivering on that vision to the extent that we can to date, and certainly our work on the kind of the programmatic side is evidence of that, as well as the crisis center. It's nice to have a vision that is aspirational and is also being achieved and seems to be resonating with the public. Next slide, please. The facilities under consideration and that we've been asking for public input on are very familiar to you: the crisis center, correctional facility, courthouse, and Sheriff with Emergency Operations Center. And to that I will also add the repurposing of the courthouse. So nothing new here, but this is what, this is kind of the foundation of our program. Next slide, please. So public engagement has been underway for about two and a half months, I would say. We're really in the thick of it now. Five presentations this week, probably 2 or 3 more before we have our second large public meeting on October 13th. And I just wanted to remind you of the key questions that we asked in the public engagement process. So first is to ask, to rank the importance of each facility. Second is where should the new courthouse be located, whether on a suburban campus or potentially downtown. And then the third is talking a little bit about the repurposing of the historic courthouse. As Commissioner Weiss heard me say to the Corvallis City Council last night, what is not explicitly asked is your preference on site. And that was really a recommendation that came from our engineering and design consultant, DLR, who has been through this many times. They discouraged us from asking that question explicitly for a couple of reasons. One, to some extent, it's a foregone conclusion that you're going to talk about site. And we have, of course, we've gotten input. The second is that when you start asking about site, you typically get exactly what you would expect, which is people living near a proposed justice system facility tend to have concerns, and people that are not in proximity are basically agnostic. And so, to some extent, it's a conversation that is predictable and doesn't really yield any new information. Also, we struggle with the amount of time we're getting to these various stakeholder groups, and frankly, getting through the presentation, which is both informative and for discussion purposes and feedback purposes within an hour is a challenge. And so we did try to limit the number of questions we were asking. I think with that, let me just pause for a second. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa, and she's going to really dive into the results that we've heard to date. And I also invite you to stop and ask questions along the way. So any questions yet to this point? No? Okay. Alyssa, then take it away, please.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you for having us today, Commissioners. For those watching that may not know me, my name is Alyssa Rash. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers, and I am the Benton County Public Information Officer and largely overseeing communications for the Justice System Improvement Program. As Nick mentioned, I do have our public engagement consultant, Julie Fisher, here with me. She may be jumping in to provide some additional points as I go. So we'll start with just discussing the outcomes of our public engagement from June through September, which are really astounding. As we go into this, we're really looking at who are we engaging, how often are we engaging them, and what are we getting out of that engagement. So this kind of helps us break that down a little bit. From June to September, we have built a 730 plus interested parties list. That's our email list that we're sending out, meeting invites and project updates too. We've conducted over 21 speaking engagements and small group conversations with over 200 attendees, and over 300 people have been invited. We've also hosted our first virtual community meeting on September 8th. We had great turnout, great engagement from that meeting, and we do have another one scheduled for October 13th, where we're going to come back, provide some additional information, and really do some gut checking on our end of this is what we heard from our community. Let's make sure that those assumptions are correct before we move forward. At the September 8th meeting, the county received 137 RSVPs. We had 79 attendees in person on Zoom, and 130 who had responded as interested or attending on the Facebook event. We also had about 306 people reach through the Facebook live stream. That doesn't necessarily mean they or watched the entire presentation, but it does mean that they saw it, they maybe interacted with it in some way, or they watched a small clip. We've also emailed 106 stakeholder organizations individually. That was largely Julie. I give her all of the kudos for that. We did this to introduce them to the project and invite them to share information about our virtual community meeting with their stakeholders and communities. There we go. All right. So, as I mentioned, we've done over 21 stakeholder speaking engagements and small group conversations. So to break out our definitions of those two things, because I think that they sound very similar and largely are. A speaking engagement is where we are presenting at an organization's regularly scheduled meeting. And that would be where Nick is talking about getting on somebody's agenda. And then a small group conversation is a meeting hosted by Benton County where participants participants are individually invited. And we did a number of those really specifically at the beginning of our public engagement, where we reached out to core stakeholder groups and said, we want to host this conversation, please come. And then we started moving into these speaking engagements where we reached out to organizations and said, we'd love to present to your community and get your community information on our program. So here is a list of the organizations that we have presented to, including the dates. We felt that that was really important for you to see. It is not a comprehensive list of everyone that we have engaged, but these are the people that we have presented to. So with that, I would like to take a moment and pause and ask, as you review this list, if there is specific stakeholder groups that you are concerned that we may have missed. Hi, Joe.
Alyssa, I guess I'd like an update. Last week when we met and were reviewing this list, I expressed a concern about the Grand Oaks subdivision not being on this particular list. As I understand it, it was done extensive outreach to that neighborhood and have not received any meeting dates or times at this point. So just any update you can provide on that during your presentation would be helpful.
Sure, thank you. And I am going to refer that to Julie, who has been interacting with those key contacts you've mentioned.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think I sent an email late last week with potential dates and opportunities for a Benton County sponsored meeting and asked the stakeholders that I do have contact for, including the board of the homeowners association, to indicate if any of those dates work for them, and I am awaiting response. So we're ongoing for sure, and looking forward to that.
I just equate that to being similar to the Willamette Landing Homeowners Association, which is a homeowners association that's close to the southward side, and Grand Oaks is close to the west side. So that's the reason for my question.
Good morning. I was just today talking to a community member who works with health population, and they recommended that you all meet with the health provider group that meets with Julie Arena once a month on Mondays. I'm not sure exactly when, but Julie facilitates that meeting, and that would be a good way to connect with all of them and see how this project maybe is being supported by the groups.
Thank you, Johan. A group that is not on here is also the Hope Advisory Board, which Nick is engaging, I believe, tomorrow evening. But we will be sure to include that as well. Thank you.
And then what just popped into my head real quick would be, have we reached out to the Monroe City Council, the Adair Village City Council? I know we went to Corvallis City Council last night.
Sure, thank you, Commissioner. And when I look at this list, I see that a lot of this is very Corvallis-centric. We have been engaging our municipality partners through, first, our focused small group conversations, and we do have ongoing outreach to the rural communities through the school districts, city councils, chambers of commerce, and range halls. We have been a little bit slow in getting responses back, so we have that continued re-engagement, but that is definitely groups that we are targeting.
Okay, great. And there are also, I'm blanking on what they're called, but they're community something. They're like neighborhood associations, but for large rural areas. Although I hear they're not always very active. But Pat, you know what I'm talking about?
I do. CACs, community action committees, or make up your own words, but it is CAC.
Thank you.
And started probably 50 years ago when land use planning was a new idea, and they were formed to, much like this effort, to get information out to people that would be affected. The majority, I think, are inactive and are finding folks would have a better idea.
Julie Briggs-Barrett would be a good point of contact or conduit with those groups.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that as well. Are there any other groups that you would like to make sure that we are sure to engage as we move forward?
There's not any that I can think of at this moment, but if I think of some, should I email you, Alyssa, or Nick, or some? Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you. All right, with that, I will move on. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Moore.
With most meetings being virtual, I guess I would encourage as large a grouping as we can. What I see with these meetings is it's considerable staff time, maybe 8 or 10 staff on the meeting, and to have more staff than community members. I mean, that happens, but I think the goal should be to get as large a group to make the staff time a worthwhile investment.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's certainly been very interesting to engage this, or to conduct this first part of public engagement. Apologies. So reboot. There we go. To delay this, begin this first round of public engagement in a virtual setting. It's been, there's been lots of learning opportunities as we've begun this. One of those being, how do we maximize attendance before the meeting? Because as you've mentioned, we've had a few times where we have begun our presentation and realized, wow, Benton County staff outnumbers the attendees. And I do think that that's a risk with even in-person engagement. But we have deployed a number of ways to try to bolster attendance and remind folks of their upcoming meeting. I think people are sometimes quick to RSVP yes or maybe as attending, and then make the decision in the moment that they just don't have the capacity to attend. So we do run that risk with every meeting, but we have started seeing better attendance numbers as we've moved from small group conversations into speaking engagements, and also by deploying these methods of reminding people about the meeting, encouraging them to fill out the post-meeting survey and things of that nature.
I'd like to say, thank you for comments as well. Commissioner Malone, I'm very frugal by nature, so yeah, of course I'm concerned about how many staff we have at any particular meeting. But I also am mindful of the fact that, I think we're saying a real statement, we're making a real statement when we have broad staff support at these meetings. It shows our commitment, and in fact, there was that comment at the first large public meeting that our answers seemed almost scripted because we were so well prepared. And I realize there's a cost to being so well prepared, but I think it's the right place to be as we contemplate such a major initiative for the county. Also had a very interesting experience this morning, kind of to the effect of you never know how things are going to turn out. And we presented to the Willamette Homeowners Association, and I think they had 7, 8, 9 people there, which wasn't a bad showing by any means, but received an invitation this morning to have a follow-up one-on-one with them, with several people, to have a more in-depth discussion. And so I'm just mindful of the fact that you plant the seeds And then, things can grow from there. So, we'll try and find the right balance. I think we're achieving a good balance, and we'll continue to work on the right proportions.
Thank you, Nick. And the last thing I add here is that these community groups and partners are going to be key ambassadors to this program as we move forward. And I do think that they very much appreciate the time spent getting to have these conversations with us in small settings where they can ask really kind of complicated questions that Nick is able to walk them through and identify subject matter experts who are available in the meeting to provide additional information and clarification. Nick has also, after most of these meetings, provided email follow-ups with several of the attendees as they have questions that, maybe just required more time or that they thought on afterwards. So I think we've seen a wonderful return on the investment with these. All right, with that, I will move forward. So one of the things that we thought were really important to bring to you, commissioners, was some of the things that we are hearing in these public engagement sessions. These are direct quotes taken from people throughout all of our city engagements and small groups. And I'm just going to take some time to click through these slides and read them with you. Please feel free to stop me, ask questions. Nick and Julie, please also feel free to provide additional clarification if I miss anything. So this is kind of our this first slide is our first large takeaways that we're starting to see, which is that this is the best connection between programs and facilities that this person has seen. And that's the hook for them and many others. So we're starting to get really good at how we talk about how we're integrating programs and facilities, and that we really need these two together to be successful in the program. The cost for retired, low-income or low-earner income households is going to be really hard for property owners to stomach. I feel like I'm being driven out of my home. Seeing the options for justice system facilities buildings helps me realize it's not just concrete and barbed wire. I think this is in direct reference to when Nick shows the 3 pictures of the justice system facilities and what they look like, and that they're not just big, ugly concrete monoliths, and that they can be really beautiful buildings for our community. I would like to hear debate on the geographic equity of the location issue. A little context around that is that that's a quote that we heard in one of our engagements with the neighborhood association, which would be very close to one of the project sites. And as Nick mentioned, we do hear a lot of the not in my backyard or NIMBY sentiment when we are engaging with groups that are going to be close to one of those 2 sites. Some additional quotes here would be, do you really expect a $100 million bond measure to pass when previous measures have failed at much lower amounts? And an important one that we didn't necessarily have to speak for, but we really wanted to mention is accountability is tough. Do not forsake it. This slide focuses largely on transportation and location issues, or concerns, I should say. So for the West Hills area, there is some concern around transportation loading and what that would look like with a campus on our west site. And many of our Southtown residents feel like they are getting the short end of the stick, and they're not thrilled with the idea of a justice system facility in their neighborhood. And so this, to us, as we look at this, part of it is there are important considerations, and another part is what do we need to address in order to make this a workable solution for the neighbors of our community, the neighbors of these facilities. Another concern that I really want to draw your attention to is was mentioned in one of our Southtown presentations, which is I'm concerned about flooding with the south side, especially in the event of Cascadia. Having emergency services in Southtown cut off is not a good thing. And then something that Nick likes to call back to, because it was a really kind of startling quote that we heard fairly early on in our speaking engagement, was about the courthouse being located downtown. And that's the bottom quote, which says 110% the courthouse needs to be downtown. It's our civic life and supports other jobs down there. This person, one of the things that they had mentioned was the courthouse is, at first, it needs to be visible to the community, but also where protests and rallies and things of that nature occur. And we want those to be very visible, and we don't necessarily want them to be happening through neighborhoods. And so that's something that we look at and we go, wow, that's not a comment that we anticipated as we went into public engagement. We're very grateful to have these opportunities to hear things like this. Nick, I see your mic is on.
I did. I just wanted to share, I had an interesting thought, Commissioners, when I was out for my run this morning. I was thinking about that very quote, and all of a sudden it occurred to me, well, the historic courthouse isn't going to go anywhere, and I wonder if people will continue to use it as their location for protest, regardless of where we build a new courthouse. That thought hadn't occurred to me, so I just wanted to put it out there for you. That I appreciated what I heard from this person, and at the same time, I was wondering if, even if we did build a new courthouse on one of the suburban locations, if the historic courthouse would continue to be the site of public engagement.
Thank you, Nick. Excellent point. I will move along. And this last slide largely focuses on quotes around efficiency. So some of the things we heard are, I recommend centralized security for as many people as possible. One site makes sense. Same staff for several uses to be efficient. Another one is around the Emergency Operations Center. As we look at the climate crisis and pandemic, there's more and more likelihood that we need emergency operations centers that are viable to the community. So we are hearing a lot of thought and consideration around co-locating facilities, and for as much as we hear that, we also hear we really want our courthouse to be downtown. We're balancing those narratives, but I really wanted to make sure that you're able to see that these are the kind of thoughts that we're hearing from our community around the efficiency. Nick, do you have any more thoughts to share before I move on to close? Okay. So as we mentioned, we had this first September 8th virtual community meeting. Here is a screen capture of one of the invitations that went out early on for the meeting. We had a wonderful attendance, and something that we saw as we sent out these emails was that they got forwarded. We had amazing help from community groups and also elected representatives forwarding them on to their stakeholders. And I think that's how we were able to also grow our stakeholder list so quickly, was that these emails just went everywhere, which is really amazing to see. In the September 8th virtual community meeting, we were really diligent about having subject matter experts on hand to be able to answer questions in the form of a question and answer panel. We did receive some feedback that there were a few people who would really appreciate having the opportunity to be on a panel next time. So that's definitely something we'll look at as we go into the October 13th meeting. But to just touch on these, we had Danielle Brown, who was able to speak to mental health and behavioral health services. We had Commissioner Joe Kirby and County Administrator Joe Kirby and Commissioner Dan Ogerow. We had Captain Vinny of the Benton Jail and Sheriff Dan Arsall. We also had two representatives from DLR Group, our design consultant, who are available to answer specific design questions, things like that. And we have local buyer who could answer some of the transportation concerns that we had anticipated that we would get coming out of those speaking engagements with neighborhood groups. In the September 8th meeting, we ran some polls, and so to contextualize these for you commissioners, the results that you're going to see on the next few slides are only from the results of that meeting. These were questions that we asked in all of our community engagements. Those are the same questions we've asked in all of our community engagements, but the results that I'm showing right now are just from September 8th. And so when we asked folks to please rank the importance of these.
Sorry to interrupt. Can everybody see the entire graph? You can, okay. All right. Very well.
Okay. When we asked folks to please rank the importance of each facility to the community, what we saw was that a huge majority of our community a huge majority of the respondents really very highly prioritized the crisis center. That was followed by the correctional facilities. So those are two needs that our community can see we need to move forward with, right? And there were more mixed results as we moved towards the courthouse and the sheriff and emergency operations. And I think that is maybe because we have focused a lot of our presentation around the need for a crisis center and correctional facilities. So I just want to give you that context a little bit more. Nick, is there anything else you'd like to share on this graph?
You're good. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. I will move along. The second question that we asked that evening was, where should the new courthouse be located? And there were two options, and the options were concept 1 or 2, which is either the west or south site, or concept 3A or 3B, which is locate the courthouse downtown. As you can see, almost 55% of the respondents said that they would prefer the courthouse to be downtown or to meet their needs.
I will chime in here.
Okay.
I do just want to share with the commissioners that while at least in this public poll, the sentiment, and with most of our public presentations, the sentiment has been for a preference of downtown, there is a vocal public minority, and as well the technical advisory committee that really sees the efficiencies of a justice campus where the courthouse is essentially co-joined with the correctional facility. And as we move forward, we're not making a decision about the location of the courthouse today or even in the immediate future, but operationally, of course, there's potentially some big savings. And so I will present to you, we'll do an analysis of what the transportation costs are if you have a distributed courthouse from the correctional facility, so that you can take that into account along with other factors, and we finally get down to making that decision.
Yeah, I appreciate this kind of polling or giving us some guidance on where our community places their priorities, and I would hope that you can continue doing some, kind of informal polling, but as commissioners, we get maybe a little bit random people that contact us, and it's nice to have an idea of what the broader community where their values and priorities are. So keep it coming.
Thank you, Commissioner, and just once again to contextualize these numbers, these are the respondents of the September 8th meeting. In our final public engagement report, we will provide a more comprehensive outlook at what we're hearing through all of our stakeholders, but we did not do this level of in-meeting polls in our presentation, so those are largely going to be providing you with quotes, providing you with examples of what we're hearing. Our final question that we asked that evening was that the county is studying options for the historic courthouse, and which option do you favor? So we had about 10.5% saying upgrade it for the district attorney's office. I would say this largely agrees with what we have heard in small group and conversations and speaking engagements, which is that that's the least favored option. And then a decent split between the next two options, which are upgrade it for public access, if you accept these to be determined, or maintain it for public access without upgrades. So I will end my portion of this presentation with just highlighting some of the key takeaways that I've discussed throughout, which are that we have heard opportunities voiced by the public, and those are that there's an opportunity for the improvement of community safety, security, and the ability to respond in a crisis. There are operational efficiencies that can be created through co-locating facilities in a campus, and there are proposed the proposed improvements provide both accountability and treatment through programs and facilities, which, as you'll recall, is key to the vision of this program. Some of the large takeaway concerns and questions that we continue to get are transportation impacts to neighborhoods, specifically the west site. There are site concerns, such as flooding on the south site, and the supporting infrastructure and gateway concerns. The supporting infrastructure includes the roads. It also includes transportation. How do we get folks to and from the site who need other transportation options besides a car? There are economic impacts of added taxes to Benton County residents. There's safety and property valuation concerns near correctional facilities. As I touched on, there are equity and NIMBY, which is not in my backyard, concerns regarding site location. And we are hearing a lack of trust in county financial decisions. With that, I will hand it back to Nick unless commissioners who have any questions on this slide.
Alyssa? This is Julia. Could you just describe a little bit about this last bullet point regarding lack of trust in county financial decisions?
I would love to hand that to Nick, actually, as I was not present during the presentation that we heard this at.
Sure. So that was reflects, I think, two presentations, both to Benton County Sheriff's Office staff, and there were opinions voiced that related to where the county is prioritizing funding facilities relative to the case of county facilities that are being proposed as questions on past decisions relating to the law enforcement block and Cascade Apartments and use of that area for expanded justice system facilities. So that's mostly reflected from that particular stakeholder group, but I think it's a very important stakeholder group, as it's the core users of the facilities that we're proposing. At least two of the four facilities Okay, so next steps, kind of went through this already, but, just as a reminder, we have some decision points relative to site. Obviously, our public engagement is not just about site, it's about a broader set of questions that you will be answering between now and about mid-April of next year relative to the suite of facilities, cost of the bond measure, where the historic, or the repurposing of the historic courthouse and the location of the proposed new courthouse. But in the immediate future, we're going to be aligning on a site preference between south and west, have our public meeting, second March public meeting mid-October, and then move into a draft and final purchase and sale agreements based on your site selection decision. So this is where we're heading in the next little over 2 months. That's just our information on the next public meeting. And I think that's it. Yep, okay. We can probably stop screen sharing at this point. Thank you, Alyssa, Julie, and to Jamie.
Yeah, thank you so much. Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, a couple things. The NIMBY question, concern is legitimate. I think but as far as the correctional facility, NIMBY, not in my backyard. Well, where is the jail currently? It's in Corvallis's front yard. And I think as far as I know, there's not significant problems with the current location. The problem is with the facility. And this was a problem on the last both for the correctional facility, had the site in Paloma, and there was significant opposition in Paloma. And so I think it's that's a concern that needs addressing. Like Alyssa mentioned, the slides of what other modern facilities look like, I think is really important to emphasize that this could be a positive addition to the neighborhood. There are the harder concerns, especially with West Side, is traffic, and that's kind of a separate issue from the facility itself. And I think there's been work done that we will, no matter what site, we won't be significantly impacting the current traffic issues. But it's, I guess it comes with the territory anytime you change the neighborhood, and there are concerns about people's imaginations maybe running ahead of the facts and what the facility might look like and what the facility might, how it might impact the neighborhood. But I think that just comes with the territory, and that's something we need to consistently work at.
I agree, Commissioner, and I just wanted to quickly respond. In the short time that I've been here with the county, I've had a great mentor in Joe Kirby, who spends tremendous amount of time and effort and sincere effort addressing concerns from the public. And it's helpful that I think I live in town, and I have reflected at times on how I would feel if we were proposing to build a justice facility in the Timber Hill area where I live. I think I would have a reaction not unlike some that I've heard. So I try to be empathetic and really work on addressing the concerns and educating and not being judgmental. At times I'm spending upwards of, an hour or two a day addressing emails, but I think it's part of the process, and I think it's being effective. It is effective, and I plan to continue on that avenue as we work through this.
Thank you. And I wanted to speak to this NIMBY word that we were using. I just want us to be cautious when we talk about it because, we don't want to discount, or we don't want anyone to feel like we are discounting their concerns because their concerns still are valid. And plus, nobody wants to, feel like they're being called a name, they're going to get defensive. I think it's more of just balancing, concerns and all of the pros and cons. So maybe in the future, instead of us using the word NIMBY, we could describe it as, balancing the concerns of the neighborhood with, other pros and cons.
Certainly, thank you, Commissioner, for that reminder.
Sure. Joe?
Thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to thank our staff. There's the staff that's on the screen with you today, and then there's certainly others. There's been a heavy lift that our staff has done, especially over the last couple of months with this public engagement effort. It's important, and our staff has done it well, and I'm really proud of the work that they have done. And there's a host of others that aren't part of this call today that have been part of this process as well. So thanks to staff, thanks to Julie Fisher, and we will continue with public engagement as we move forward.
Thank you, Joe, and yes, thank you so much to the staff. Commissioner Malone?
Yeah, another comment from the League of Women Voters town hall last night. I think, Nick, you used the phrase revolving door for some of our frequent flyers, and tie in with that concept, the failure to appear rate that's kind of off the chart, and I guess to me that ties in with we currently have a jail, we want a correctional facility, and I think that makes a nice package of describing where we are currently and where we really need to be to make our community safer and better for everybody. But I thought that was effective, and hopefully hear more of that going forward. I remember, I guess it's been close to 3 years ago, Ari Basil Wagner talking about jail versus rehabilitation and correctional facility. And the first time I heard her say that is, well, that's too long. And, but it's accurate. We have a jail, and I heard the rehabilitation part describing the facility, but at least continue to call what we want and need a correctional facility.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Sheriff Van Arsdale, I saw you popped on. Would you like to say anything?
I just, in case Commissioner Malone yourself had any questions, I just want to make sure you know I'm still here and available.
Thank you very much. Pat, any questions for the Sheriff?
Well, I've mentioned this before, but between the Sheriff and Captain Devaney, I would guess the great majority of our community members don't really know what kind of facility we currently have. And I think it's important to know we're trying, but to get the word I'm in a volunteer organization, or now as commissioner. I think it's my job, our job, to give the tools to the people on the front lines, whether it's the jail or the mental health folks, give them the tools so they can be successful. And right now that I have a hard time figuring out, but I'm at least embarrassed with our current jail. We're asking staff to do a heroic job in an inadequate facility. And it might be a small thing, but I know when we toured the jail not too long ago, we were standing in the public area, the first room you come into. There were 5 or 6 of us, and it was kind of full. And oh, by the way, on the other side of the room is the bathroom for everybody. And so there is no staff bathroom in the back. They get to walk through the public area. Sometimes there's public, I'm assuming there's public in there that aren't real happy with law enforcement. And it just, for so many reasons, we need to move forward. I think it's very helpful on these town halls to have the sheriff and Captain Devaney saying just what the current situation is and what you could do with the new facility.
Thank you, Commissioner Malone. I completely agree. And with that, we are running up against our 11 a.m. public hearings. Now we can just take a minute to transition, and I'll say thank you once again to staff. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Commissioner Wise, if you'd like, you could proceed with the consent calendar before the public hearings.
Okay, we can do that in 1 minute. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries. That is approved. And I see that it is 11 a.m. So we will move into public hearing number 1, which is in the matter of adopting a supplemental budget for fiscal year 2021-23- oh gosh, I have to read all that. Anyway, I see Jennifer Ambulance here with Financial Services. Hello, Jen.
Good morning, Commissioners. Just to clarify, that would actually be 21-22, or actually 21-23 supplemental budget, and that's 22031. And as discussed previously, there are 5 funds that are going to need some updating, and the first one is our general fund, and there is a net appropriation increase within that fund of $693,207. And within that, general government operations is increasing $561,500. And that is to set up the appropriation for the CARES equity funds to cover anticipated staffing costs, the vaccination incentives, various just materials and services, and then the purchase of the mobile vaccination van. Also in the general fund, there is an increase of $121,600 in natural areas, parks and events. What the funding for that is a transfer that's going to be coming from the fair fund, and that is to increase the appropriations for temporary staffing and benefit costs in the general fund, as they were unintentionally budgeted under the fairgrounds operations during the consolidation process last year. And then lastly, contingency would increase $10,107, and that is increased revenue from the Oregon Judicial Department for the law library. Before I move on, are there any questions on the general fund? No? Okay. Next would be the fair fund. This is just a reclassification of appropriation authority. Within cultural and education operations, we would be decreasing appropriations, the $121,600 that I did mention above. And that is to create the next item I'm going to talk about, which is the transfer authority. So then we are asking to increase transfer authority appropriation, that $121,600. That will allow us to transfer the budget authority from the fair fund to the general fund to cover those temporary staff and benefit costs. Any questions on the fair fund? Okay. Next up is the special grant fund, which was formerly the HUD block grant fund. We are asking for a net appropriation increase of $1,100,000, and that is within community services operations. The funding source for that are 3 community development block grants that cover childcare, food bank, and housing assistance. And so we're asking to increase the appropriations in the corresponding amount as pass-through contracts to the outside agencies per the agreement. Are there any questions on that one? All right. Court Security Fund, there's a net appropriation increase of $19,984. Again, this is increased revenue from the Oregon Judicial Department. And in this case, we're asking to increase appropriations for contracted services for court security. And I'm assuming there's no questions on that one. And then the last one would be the trust fund, and it's the smallest increase, but it is an ask of $8,743. Also, increased revenue from Oregon Judicial Department. And that appropriation increase would just be in professional services for court mediation. Any questions on that one? Okay, so overall, I'm coming to the board to ask for a total net appropriation increase of $1,821,934. Of that, operations would increase $1,690,227. Transfers would increase $121,600, and contingency would increase $10,107. And that would be it for supplemental budget 22031.
Jen, is there a minimum amount that has to be hit before the supplemental budget takes effect?
No, sir, there does not.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions or comments for Jen? Okay, at this time I'll open it up for public testimony. Do we have anyone that would like to testify? Anybody at all? Hearing and seeing none. Let's see, no staff response is necessary. So we will close the record, and that brings us into deliberations and making a decision. Pat, do you have any comments, or would you like to make a motion?
I'm ready to make a motion. I move to adopt resolution number R 2021-024 in the matter of supplemental budget 22-031.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Okay.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries. All right, thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you, have a great day.
Vance, I see you popped on.
I'm next in line.
Perfect. So let's see, public hearing number 2, second reading regarding the annexation of property within the Dunback Lane Domestic Water District into the North Albany County Service District. Go ahead, sir.
I just want to correct that statement. This is the second hearing, not the second reading. Our annexation proceedings under statute require 2 separate public hearings. You held the first public hearing, I want to say it was back on August 17th. That hearing was for the purpose of determining whether it was in the public interest to annex the property that comprised the Dunbeck Lane Service District into our North Albany County Service District. You found there was. You voted and adopted an order authorizing that annexation. Today's hearing is for one purpose and one purpose only. By law, we are required to provide notice and an opportunity for any elector within the Dunbeck Lane district that would be annexed to file an objection, either written or to speak and provide testimony objecting to the annexation of the property into our county service district. So if there are not roughly 15 to 18 people who object, this is one of those very rare instances, Pat and Nancy, where your hands are tied, you do have to approve the annexation. It's not an either or option. So at this point, it's really a matter of whether there have been written objections filed. I spoke with Teresa, and she told me nothing has been filed. So now I will just pass it back to the chair to ask if anybody wishes to testify. And just so you know, I see Bo Price, the chair of the Dunbeck Lane Service District, is in attendance, as is Chris Bailey, the Public Works Director for the city of Albany.
Yes, all right. Is there any public testimony at this time? Would anybody like to testify? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on. No staff response necessary. So are we into deliberations, making a motion?
Yeah. Deliberations, if you have any questions for me, you can make a motion. If none of the above, appeal to you.
This might speed things up. What page in the packet are we on?
I see on mine, I see 99 on my Word, on my PDF packet.
Thank you.
And I had to check to make sure my microphone was on, make sure you heard that.
Are you ready for a motion?
Yes, please.
I move to approve order number D 2021-065 in the matter of annexing property within the Dunbeck Lane Domestic Water Supply Special District into the North Albany County Service District effective October 21st, 2021.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 And I just want to note for the record, the effective date of that annexation is 1 month from today. And the purpose for that is to allow the Dumbeck Lane folks to basically close out their accounts and transfer to Benton County the remaining accounts. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Joe?
Thank you, Commissioner. Before anybody jumps off, I realize we have another item that relates to this, but I want to, before Chris Bailey potentially drops off, I just wanted to thank Chris Bailey from the City of Albany. She's done a tremendous job of helping shepherd this forward. Peter Trosden's been on board with this since the beginning. I'd really like to highlight the Bo Price as well. Bo has been dealing with the Dunbeck district for many years. Actually, it was Bo and Chris and myself and a few others that have met on this topic back in June. I'm happy to say that the plan that we laid out in June is now coming to fruition. That wouldn't have happened without Chris, without Bo Price, without Vance, and also Barry Stockoff. Big heavy lift here just in the 3 months that we've been working on it diligently. So thanks to everyone for making this happen.
Thanks, Joe. I will also say that Chris is going to be with us for a while. We've got 3 more items related to this, so you can't push her off the line that easily.
All right, so I think that takes us into our next agenda item under new business, which is in the matter of dissolving Dumbeck Lane Domestic Water Supply District. Vance, you are up again.
And so I warned you guys, you have 3 more items here. So as you well know, the primary reason that Dumbeck Lane has approached the county even a couple of years ago is they've had trouble. Actually, trouble I think is understating it. They have been unable to recruit individuals to run for or serve as the governing body of the service district. And that has created, as I'm sure you can imagine, a tremendous challenge just keeping that district operational, paying its bills, dealing with City of Albany for supplies of water. Ultimately, it has led the the Dumbeck Lane Water District to not to be flipped, but I know Bo has pretty much done it. He just thrown his hands up and said, we've had enough. We just can't go on. That has led to conversations with Benton County about absorbing the properties, which you just did. Those Dumbeck Lane properties, 1 month from now, will become part of our service district. The other piece of that equation is now that water service will be provided to those properties through the county service district, there is no reason for the Dumbeck Lane Special District to remain in effect. The Dumbeck Lane Board has met, it published its notice, provided an opportunity for any of its members to speak at its public meeting on the topic of dissolution. I don't believe anybody spoke at the Dumbeck Lane meeting. The board adopted its resolution by statute saying that it wished to dissolve and then forwarding that resolution to the county governing board, which is the 2 of you today. And under state law, it is up to the board of commissioners to be the final arbiter of whether dissolution occurs. The criteria are that it's in the public interest to do so, and that there has been, in this case, an inability of the special district to fill its vacant board seats. And as you see, we'll see in the order, we do state that it has been several years they have struggled to find board members, that criteria has been met. Public interest, all the infrastructure will be transferred over to Albany. The actual delivery of the water won't change. It's just instead of having the Dumbeck Special District as sort of the middle person, it'll be our county service district. It's still the city of Albany. So it is in the public interest to dissolve this district. Like I said, the district has already voted to dissolve the district. This is kind of a formality for Benton County to accept that resolution and adopt its own resolution dissolving the district. I don't know if Pat has a question or not.
Looks like he does.
Yes, I do, Vance. I remember a discussion of the current district has some debt. I know there were a couple options for how to handle that. Could you go over what was decided on that?
Yeah, so the Dumbeck Special District has taken almost all of its cash and paid down the balance of its Business Oregon loan, I want to say to the tune of roughly $320,000 is paid down. The outstanding balance was about $377,000. Benton County will, once we receive the remaining cash that Dumbeck has, by law, the special district turns it over to the service district that's taking over. Once we receive that cash, we will either apply all of that cash to pay off the balance or apply that cash plus what Benton County needs to add to zero out that loan. And we expect it to be about $20,000 that Benton County has to contribute to zero out that loan. One of the reasons we've got the October effective date for annexation is it allows us time to zero out that loan so that there's no transfer of the loan from the Dumbeck Special District to the North Albany County Service District. It would just go away before the actual annexation takes place. Once we've got the amount nailed down that we need to contribute to pay off that balance, we'll know how much Albany will be collecting. What you will see in your North Albany County Service District agenda is a rate request, I think that's on the consent calendar, to deliver, to provide water service to these residents who used to be in Dumbeck, but those folks who still owe money on their loan repayment account will continue to make that payment at $19 a month. Albany will kind of collect that repayment assessment, if you will, and just remit it to Benton County. And once we've been paid off, that $19 per customer charge will go away. And then those folks who were in Dumbeck and that are now in North Albany will just, for all intents and purposes, they will just blend in with all the other North Albany County Service District. So that's kind of a long-winded explanation, but I wanted to make sure it got on the record.
I would expect no less, Vance. Thank you. And just housekeeping, my internet, I keep getting a message saying, I think it's talking about the internet is unstable. And, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it said. So I'm doing my best here, but if I fade away, I'll probably have to close out and come back.
Great. Well, I think you're doing well so far, Pat. Your camera's gone blurry a couple times, but other than that, I think you've been good so far.
So do we have a motion that we need to make?
I'm ready. I move to adopt order number D 2021-066, dissolving the Dumbeck Lane Domestic Water Supply District. Do I need to put in the ORS that goes with that, Vance?
No.
Okay.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Thank you both.
Thank you. That takes us to our next item, 6.2, in the matter of approving a notice of intent applying for funding from the Federal Lands Access Program, or SLAP, for the South Fork Road corridor. We have Laurel Byer with us. I really wanted to say SLAP, by the way, so. Uh-oh, where's the, oh, there's Pat. Okay.
No, I like that too, flat print. Good morning again, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to talk about this opportunity. So the Federal Lands Access Program is really set up through the Western Federal Lands Group. And they have, there's an opportunity right now to do some basically improvements to roads or highways that are leading into federal lands. And so it's very specific that it's supposed to go to agencies that do not have, the capability of putting other funds to these roads. So it's specifically for local agencies. And this is for the federal fiscal years of 2024 for 2025. And so we have already met with the Bureau of Land Management and went out and looked at the South Fork Road. And South Fork Road actually was a recipient of FLAP grant in 2016. And the BLM as well as the Council of Governments put together a corridor study. And what they were looking at were safety improvements that needed to happen along the corridor because there's a lot of mixed use out there. It's the main, not only South Fork, but also Alpine Road are the main entrance points to the Alcide Falls recreation site, as well as the I don't mountain bike, so I'm looking for the name of the Fall Creek Trail System out there. And so there's a lot of recreational users that use this corridor. And so we think this is a great opportunity for the county to apply and try to get some pavement preservation done to the corridor, not only on South Fork, but also probably on Alpine as well, from Highway 99 to East Bell Fountain. And so there were other priority projects that were identified within the South Fork Road Corridor Plan. And the Bureau of Land Management actually has received funding to do some improvements along their portion of the corridor. So I think that's another reason why it will make this grant application more, attractive to the Western Federal Lands, because we're going to be able to work in coordination to actually just really improve this corridor. In talking to the BLM, they also talk about the bike riders. They use this as a century route where they actually use South Fork and bike it on a loop for 100 miles. So there's not only people that are doing the trail riding, but also people out there, hiking through the Alcide Falls, and just really think this is a great opportunity. The grant is due on October 7th, and so we're kind of drafting that up in coordination with the BLM. And there will be a match required at the 10.27% match. And right now, as the BLM was saying, we need to target a grant ask of $3 to $5 million. And you know that sounds like a lot, but this will actually be a federally led project, and so it'll cost more than if just the county could do it. But that is part of the program, is that the Western Federal Lands are required to actually administer the project. So the match is estimated to be about $300,000, but that will come from road funds. We're not going to request a general fund match. Do you have any questions?
One of my questions was about the county match but it's, so I assume we would find out about, if we're successful sometime in the next year, is that correct?
Yes.
And then, it's not in the current, this work wouldn't be in the current biennium.
No, it's not. It would be in the next cycle, the 2024 to 25. So let's see, we're doing 21, 23 right now, so it would be 24 to 26 is where we would look at, which fiscal year we look at. And probably what we would do is look at using our, the money that we set aside, public works sets aside for road maintenance to go towards this match.
So relatively easy to come up with match dollars.
Well, it's, I don't know about relatively easy, but it's making a priority, you know, to actually focus on a corridor that's just seeing more and more use. And outside of this grant opportunity, you know, spending $300,000 for the match goes much further than it would on just us doing a chip seal. So that's one way that we look at it, is that the money required for match can do more because we're getting additional funds. So.
I had done the arithmetic in my head. Oh, it's a 90-10, 10% match, but it's 10.27. That's a nice round number.
Right.
Okay. Sounds good. And driven in that area, and I like the idea of spreading our efforts around the county, and that checks that box. So. I'm ready to make a motion if that's where we're at. I move to approve the notice of intent to apply for funding through the Federal Lands Access Program, LAP, for service preservation and upgraded signage on Alpine Road, Alpine Cutoff Road, and South Fork Road in accordance with the South Fork Road Corridor Plan.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries.
All right,
Thank you, Laurel. All right, that brings us to 6.3, discussion and decision in establishing a new behavioral health position. And I believe we are looking for Danielle Brown of Health Services. Hello, Danielle.
Hi, good morning, commissioners. So, as you are aware, we developed our children's program earlier this year, and one thing that we didn't include in our program development was a customer service representative to support the team that is engaging in service provision. What we're requesting today is approval for an additional customer service representative, CSR position, to help support the ongoing needs of the children's services that we are providing in Benton County. In your packet, I believe you had the position review along with the budget, which includes salary and benefit costing for the position. The total cost for this position, which is an A13 AFSCME representative position, is $74,437 a year. We do anticipate that the program will be able to fully support this position with program revenues between our contracts with Oregon Health Authority, IHNCCO, and our wraparound payments in connection with the health center. I will pause there for any questions.
Pat, do you have any questions? At this point?
I don't think so.
All right, please continue, Danielle.
I would comment that currently we have, in the Behavioral Health Division 1 CSR that is supporting about 60 staff. Not all of them are patient-facing staff, but we do only have one CSR for the current. This would increase that CSR support and would be specific to the children's program. This position would be supporting about 15 staff when the programs are fully staffed. This will also, we're working on potentially having to find a second location for our children's programming due to space needs at the health services building. So this CSR position would move with the children's services to whatever that new location is, to help support those services at whatever that new location might be.
Joe?
Commissioners, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on the process. Positions such as this, we prefer that they are considered as part of the normal budget cycle and budget process. And in cases due to our budget being a 2-year budget, sometimes there are things we don't expect or don't anticipate or don't foresee. And in those cases, we do have a process by which departments can go through to ask for a new position outside of the normal budget cycle. That particular process involves the department coming to our position review committee that meets every Monday. And then the position review committee reviews the request and then makes a recommendation to you. Tammy Webb, who's on the call with us today, she shepherds that process. And this position did go through that process, and the position review committee, as Danielle alluded to, did recommend to the board approval of this particular position. But just wanted to notate that typically we try and have new positions just go through the biennial budget process, but we do make exceptions from time to time as part of this process, and that's why Danielle is in front of you today.
Thank you for highlighting that, Joe. Commissioner Malone, do you have any questions, comments, or would you like to make a motion?
Just a comment. I appreciate that information, Joe. I like, and especially in these COVID times, we're adding positions, and I think probably more than normal. And appreciate that the position review committee has vetted this before it comes to us. I think that's I understand that you can't always anticipate what the needs are, and so I appreciate the work of that committee. If there's no other questions or concerns, I would be ready to make a motion. I'll take that as we're ready.
Yes, please.
I move to approve the establishment of a 1.0 regular position client services representative.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Okay.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Danielle?
Danielle, there she is.
Is there another?
Last night when Nick called on me and I wasn't quite ready at the League of Women Voters, I mentioned law enforcement as being on the front lines and not too long after the meeting, I should have mentioned, Danielle and your crew is, being frontline folks that need support and some new facilities to go with your efforts. So I will actually make a note, and so next time I'm surprised when I get called on, I'll definitely include you in your efforts.
Thank you, I appreciate that, Commissioner.
I'm not always great winging it, so but I usually get there eventually.
Well, I appreciate the afterthought. I do, thank you.
Well, appreciate you, all your efforts, and you did a nice job answering questions, and you're an important component of the team to explain where we are now and where we would like to be.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, have a good day.
You too. And right now, I would actually like to take another short break, so let's come back at 11:45.
looks like we are ready to go to item 6.4, discussion and decision to approve the United Way of Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln Counties applications to include Benton County as an employee payroll deduction. And I see we have Mary Otley and Debbie Parsons listed. Hi, Mary.
Hi. Good morning. Good morning. This, what I'm bringing forward to you today is the very first request to have a workplace charitable giving agency. I don't know that, I know Nancy, you weren't here, and Commissioner Malone, I'm not sure about you, when we passed the charitable giving policy, which was officially adopted 10/1/2019. What we've done is we've lined out in the policy that any organization that would like to have payroll deductions through Benton County meet a list of criteria, and that they needed to submit an application, which United Way has submitted their application. And the procedure is that Finance and HR will review these applications and then present to you once a year by September 30th, any new applications or any recommendations we have to change the existing application. And then we will communicate out to the employees that they are able to use their payroll deductions for contributions. So it's really a matter of not having a lot of outside agencies involved in giving donations and that type of thing. Is that we will advertise the availability of them on the beat, but we not at this point in time are doing any active campaigning. And so today it is that United Way did submit their request, and they do meet all the requirements that are set forth in the policy. And so I'm looking today for the commissioners to approve United Way as an eligible charity for employee payroll deduction. Do you have any questions?
Go ahead, Pat.
Mary, on page 171 of our packet, there's 10 organizations listed, and I assume that means they are supported by United Way.
Those were the organizations that United Way listed in their application.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that information. Pat, any other questions? Would you like to make a motion?
I would love to make a motion. I move to approve United Way of Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln County's application to be included in the organizations that Benton County employees can contribute to through payroll deduction.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. All right, anything else we need to discuss on that topic? Don't believe so. Great. Let's see, so we added 6.5, which is discussion and decision regarding financial requests from Corvallis Housing First to provide $75,000 to complete renovations of 3rd Street Commons.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for letting me add this to your agenda this morning. This is a follow-up to an email that I sent to the board yesterday, which has a lot more financial specifics. I would encourage you to refer to that email. I'll just hit the highlights of the information that was provided. This particular request comes to us from Corvallis Housing First. A request was made directly to both county and city staff to fill this gap of $75,000. Before I get to the details regarding that, I need to back up to last fall when Corvallis Housing First, the city of Corvallis, Benton County, and a number of other providers got together to put together a grant application for the state who was awarding monies to communities to purchase motels, hotels within their communities to help address housing and homelessness issues in conjunction with our COVID-19 response. We were successful, those partners were successful in being awarded money to purchase a budget inn, which is on South 3rd Street in Corvallis. That has now been purchased and it's owned by Corvallis Housing First. The Corvallis Housing First, once they acquired it, set about making improvements to that particular facility. Those improvements to date are approximately $419,000, and those renovation dollars are over and above the actual purchase price to acquire the property. Corvallis Housing First has been successful with filling out of the $419,000 that the renovations have cost. They have been able to seek reimbursements and/or contributions from other organizations for the majority of that. However, there is about $94,000 of that $419,000 that they have not been able to cover at this point. They have approached the city and the county staff to see if the city and county would consider covering $75,000 of that $94,000 that is left, which they have not covered at this point. So I'm coming before you today to engage in a conversation about the county's willingness to potentially fill up to $75,000 of that $94,000 gap. I have Mary Huntley here with me today who will talk to you more about the funding piece of this. But before we get to that, I'd like to acknowledge that Suzanne Huffman, our Health Department Director, who's been shepherding this conversation, has joined us by telephone, and I'd like her to color the picture in a little bit more detail before we turn it over to Mary. So, Suzanne, why don't you go ahead and jump on?
Great, thank you, Joe. I think you covered it well, and unfortunately, because I'm on the phone, I don't have all of the detail in front of me, but I can certainly happy to provide some context. And as you know, Corvallis Housing First is one of our key community partners in terms of contributing feedback and helping to implement many of the HOPE Advisory Board recommendations that have been accepted by the City of Corvallis and Benton County. And we are in the midst of planning for our number one priority, which is creating a 24/7, 365 sheltering system, with the highest among those priorities looking at this winter and trying to get as many people as we possibly can into safe and warm shelter for the winter. Corvallis Housing First, although the 3rd Street Commons turnkey project property is ultimately, I think, intended to become permanent supportive housing, it was first and foremost a sheltering site based on the project under which it was purchased and based on our immediate need going forward. Corvallis Housing First has been able to open up one half of its 25 rooms and has 16 people in shelter at the time that Andrea made the request for the additional funding assistance. And they do intend to increase their capacity for sheltering in the winter in this and in other ways in order to help us with that big goal that we have. And probably not surprisingly, many of these older hotels and motels that were purchased as part of Project Turnkey were in need of some repair, upgrade, ADA accessibility arrangements, and also probably not surprisingly, even the best inspections didn't catch absolutely everything that really needed to be taken care of with this particular project. And as Joe said, a number of other organizations, including the Oregon Community Foundation, who administered Project Turnkey on behalf of the state, have contributed to many of those unanticipated repairs that needed to be done, in addition to acquiring some project management expertise, which although comes with a cost, is really necessary when a project of that size is being undertaken. Corvallis Housing First has used their own reserves to cover some of this, and what their hope is that they can have some assistance from the county in terms of replenishing some of those reserves.
Thank you, Suzanne, for helping paint the picture a little bit more. Also, commissioners, I did reach out to Mark Shepard, the city manager from Corvallis, and engage in a conversation about the possibility of the city and the county splitting this $75,000 contribution or anticipated contribution. And after further discussion, the city doesn't feel that they're in a position to assist in this way at this time. They have made a number of other financial commitments through their budget process and feel that their current level of funding that's been provided to community organizations is about what they can do at this point. Mark did indicate that later on this year they'll be looking at how they utilize their CARES funding, and there could be some consideration at that point to share in 50% of this. However, that is not any guarantee. And so my recommendation to the board is if you are so inclined at the end of the day to support this request, that the county cover the $75,000. Mary, you will go ahead and if you can go and jump in and share with the board kind of the financial picture, that would be great.
Yeah, Commissioners, if you think back a couple months, we actually put, we put $500,000 in reserve for hope potential costs, so that's one, we could take it out of the $500,000. It's not in the, that $500,000 is not then officially budgeted, it's in the reserve because at the time it's budgeted, we didn't know. So we have $4.4 million in reserve that as of 3 months into the budget, they haven't been touched yet. Of that, $500,000 has been earmarked for hope programs as they come down. So your option is you could take it out of $500,000 or an additional $75,000 out of the reserve. Another potential place is the ARPA funds. It could be out of discretionary, it could be out of the actually allowed ARPA funds, but we do have ARPA funds that we haven't allocated either. It's just, I keep sharing with Joe the list of funding sources and claims on the funding sources, and here in the next month, I'll share that with you as well, Commissioners, so you can see all the different potential revenue sources and the uses that we've allocated some of the projects to.
Mary,
Yeah.
can I ask for clarification? You referenced the ARPA funding, and then I think you meant discretionary funding through the CARES Act, or you're saying they're both under ARPA?
Yeah, ARPA has discretionary funds that are the lost revenues, and right now for the first year we have a little over $3 million in lost revenues. This, we don't know what's discretionary until we end the calendar year. So in January, we'll be able to calculate the lost funds for the 2021 year. But the 2020 year had a lost funds of $3 million. So those funds, I'm fairly comfortable those are discretionary. And then we have what's not discretionary of the $18 million can be used for the ARPA direction. And we're still waiting on the final rulings on that. And so housing sort of, yes, is in there. So I think it might be an allowed expenditure under ARPA as well as discretionary. So that's where I'm kind of, there's two places in ARPA, two ways to get the funding, I think, through the ARPA funds. And then the reserve.
Thank you. And so another option for us, I think, would be saying either no or saying a partial amount. Pat, do you have any thoughts?
A couple. I think, I don't know the timetable. I assume this project is going on as we speak and trying to hustle and get it up and running before late fall, early winter. So I would hate to do anything that delays the project. I am disappointed that the city is not, I guess doesn't see the urgency of being partners on this, but I think I would be comfortable going ahead and guaranteeing that they get the 75,000 that they need. I'm not quite sure of the mechanism to back towards the end of the year and see if Corvallis is interested in reimbursing us for this kind of final stage of a fairly large project. So I think we should go ahead. It sounds like we have several options on funding. Maybe it's because the one I can understand, but 500,000 in reserves for Hope. Pool number 6 was, I think, pretty clear that was the priority, and this fits right in there, unless there's reasons for using ARPA dollars or other funding mechanisms. I think I'm most comfortable with taking it out of the $500,000 Hope reserve.
Thank you, Pat. I have a question and some comments. Did we invite anyone from Corvallis Housing First to come talk to us about this, or was there any talk about it?
Commissioner, there was no invite to Corvallis Housing First. We were just trying to expedite getting this before the board because of the nature of the project, and as Commissioner Malone indicated, that it meets with the priority of Hope recommendation number 6. So it was just our desire to expedite this so that we can get the remaining rooms completed and open and ready to go. And I think they're close from what I gather. We're certainly happy to bring this back to the board at a later date if that's what the board desires, and we can certainly extend invite Andrea Myrie from Corvallis Housing First if the board is so inclined.
Thank you. I acknowledge that this is a critical project. I support the project. The county and the city have both been supporting it. On the other hand, we haven't had a lot of time to think about it. I just found out about this last night, and I don't want to give the impression that people can just come to the county and ask for big chunks of money. Just, please, we need it. And I know they wouldn't ask for it, most likely, if they didn't actually need it. So I would like to bring this back to the next meeting, or whenever we can bring it back, just so I can have a little bit of time to talk about it. And I think it would be really helpful if Andrea could come and explain just what's going on from their perspective.
You bet, happy to do that. Susanna, would you like me to coordinate with Andrea in your absence, or how would you like that to occur?
Thank you, Joe. That would be great. I'm sure Andrea would be happy to come and talk with the commissioners, and she's definitely best positioned to answer detailed questions about the project.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I think the benefit to that, Commissioner Wise, is that Commissioner Ozero, depending on what meeting we bring it back to, should hopefully be available as well. I and know what her sense is relative to the question, but I prefer her to speak to that herself.
Yeah, absolutely. Pat, do you have another comment?
Well, two things. I tell Corvallis Housing First folks that were sympathetic and wanted a little more information. And there was another thing. As far as a future motion, would that need to include where the dollars come from, which pot of money, or is that something finance people would handle?
Actually, I would prefer that the motion include where the money should be taken from. And so if the board has an idea, if you were at a future date to award money to this particular project, it's helpful for Mary and I to know now if you're leaning one direction or another in terms of how you would consider funding that. As Mary indicated, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we're trying to track and prepare for regarding allocations of money. So if you have any inclination today, that's helpful. If you don't, we can do without it, but definitely when it comes to making a motion at a future meeting, I would highly recommend to the board that it include where the money is to be coming from.
Okay, that sounds good. And I guess if staff has, I wouldn't mind a little guidance, pluses and minuses of if it comes out of here. Like I said earlier, right now it seems like to me out of the 500,000 reserves for hope is the cleanest way to proceed, but there may be more information about using ARPA dollars that I don't feel like I have at this point.
And looking at my spreadsheet I pulled up, and right now I do have the 500,000 under the ARPA allowance funding column, so it could possibly come from ARPA and not from our reserve, which, if that makes a big difference. So then our reserves would be saved for another use that doesn't apply for ARPA. So if I believe that housing will be an allowed expenditure under ARPA, but that doesn't mean that we use ARPA funds necessarily. That's another choice that we'll have to make when we start the allocation for ARPA.
Okay.
Mr. Wise, also, if I could provide just a little bit more context, kind of contrasting what the city of Corvallis does versus what Benton County has done in the past. And that is that the city has a formal process that they go through, as you well know, regarding funding of external agencies, if you will. And I can't remember exactly what they call it, funding, community service funding or something to that nature. The county does not have a similar formal process by which organizations go through to request money from the city's budget. From the county's budget. So just know that we don't have a formal process, and what you're experiencing today during the course of a given year, we'll get a handful of requests that will be brought to the board that aren't part of our budget cycle. And Mary and I have talked about having more of a formal approach in future budget years, but we're going to need more direction from the board on that if the board is open to that in the future. But just acknowledging that we haven't had a formal process for community requests in the recent past.
Thank you for explaining that, Joe. I would just add too that the city's funding now comes from their levy. It was put in with the levy and approved by the voters. So I mean, they have that funding stream identified for that purpose. So I wish I could be more helpful and identify my preferred funding stream at the moment, but I feel like I need to know a little bit more about ARPA. We probably all feel that way. Because on the one side, the $500,000 we have set aside, but that is not going to go very far for Hope, and we still have some big goals to work on for Hope. So, if I could just get more, whatever information you have that you could share for the next time we talk about this, that would be very helpful.
Sure, we'll be happy to have Mary provide more context regarding the ARPA funds. And, as we went through the budget process, knowing that Hope had just made their recommendations to the respective governing bodies, we recognized that we needed to have some money carved out. And so we decided to carve that $500,000 out of contingency. But, as we looked at what some of the options are, even just for this winter, depending on what staff come forward with, there's a heavy lift, Commissioner, as you mentioned, financially speaking, and that $500,000 may not even be enough, may not be anywhere close to enough, frankly.
Yeah, thank you. All right, do you, as staff, have enough direction to move forward? Okay.
We do, Commissioners. I'll reach out to Andrea. Suzanne is going to be on vacation. Thanks, Suzanne, for joining us today. And I will reach out to Andrea, and we'll try and schedule this back before the board within the next 2 weeks.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Pat, go ahead.
I just wanted to close the door. Kind of tag along with what Joe said about that the city has a formal process, the county does not. I think that would be a worthwhile effort. Just a couple items ago, we approved Health Department requests for additional staff, and I like the process of having that request having gone through the position review committee to make sure it fits our needs and our budget, and just like this came up kind of suddenly. And at times we have to quickly, but if there is time to go through a process, because what we're doing is trying to prioritize our spending without a very good process of saying, well, this is more important than this one, so it gets funded, this one maybe later kind of approach. So maybe that's part of our financial reorganization effort, but I would feel much more comfortable having requests like this gone through a process before it hits our desk.
Understood. Thank you.
And just to make things perfectly clear, I'm going to take back, leaning towards taking out of the Hope reserves. I assume that's for a 2-year budget, and taking out 15% in the first few months on a open-ended project may not be the best way to proceed, but like Nancy said, lay out our options and the pluses and minuses of those options.
Great. Thank you, Pat. So next on the agenda, I see other. Do we have anything under other? I do not hear anything under other. And Vance, I assume you're just popping on to make sure that I say that I'm recessing the meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
And we will be reconvening the meeting later on at 3 p.m. for site tours. And the public has been invited and is welcome to attend. We would love to see you there. The approximate address for the first site visit is 3665 Southwest Deschutes. That's 3665 Southwest Deschutes. Pat, did you want to say something?
Questioning the time. 3:15, 3:30, what time are we supposed to show up there?
Commissioners, we're beginning the tour at 3:15.
Okay.
3:15. But if you're on time, you're late, so you should still get there at 3. No, just kidding. Okay. So I am recessing the meeting, and then we are going into the North Albany County Service District Governing Board meeting. So I will open that. And are there any comments from the public? Hearing none. We have the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Move to approve the North Albany County Service District Governing Board consent calendar.
Second. All those approved say aye. Or all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries. All right, we have new business in the matter of incorporating the Dumbeck Lane Domestic Water Supply District into the North Albany County Service District and approving a new intergovernmental agreement. And I see that we have Chris Bailey with us from the City of Albany. Hello, Chris.
Hi there. Thank you for inviting me to your meeting. And I'll just say Vance can jump in if I get off course. So this item is an update to an existing intergovernmental agreement between the city and the County Service District Board. The IGA, previous IGA, current IGA was executed in 1990. So we needed to make some very small changes to accommodate the inclusion of Dumbeck customers into the County Service District, but we decided to go ahead and try to tackle the whole thing. So that's why there are so many edits. I apologize. The document is very messy in track changes because it is so old and was originally written when the service district was formed, and there was a lot of work to be done. So that was all described in the original IGA, and most of that, all of that has been done. So we had to remove all that. The resulting IGA is very short, essentially, and nothing really changes in terms of how the two parties are treating the current North Albany County Service District customers. They will continue to receive water. Those that are getting water will continue with their water in the same arrangement as before. It just does acknowledge that Dumbeck is now a part of that. And then we did probably the most substantial, meaningful change, which hopefully nobody on this call will have to deal with, is that we added a term and some automatic renewals and termination language because there was really no way to open this agreement up in its previous form. And so Vance and the city attorney worked on that, and that's at the very end of the document. So essentially that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know if Vance wants to add anything, but that's the sum and substance of my portion.
And Chris did an excellent job describing it succinctly. Thank you very much. I just want to point out that the fundamental reason we had to look at the IGA is the IGA in its current version requires the City of Albany to approve extending water services to new customers that were not in the original boundaries. With the annexation of Dumbeck, that triggered the need to have the city's approval. And of course, at that time, I think we all looked at that agreement and went, oh wow, 31 years is a long time. Let's see if we can make this a little bit more relevant. So So that's why you're seeing the heavily marked up, and once you remove all those red lines, the much shorter IGA.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Malone, do you have any questions or comments?
Just comment, I appreciate all the effort that has gone into this. By the time it gets to us, the heavy lifting has been done, and I appreciate that. And I meant to thank Bo, I think has dropped off, but for hanging in there, and I'm familiar with small community efforts, and goes along if you have a couple of people that are engaged, and then sometimes you can't find replacements, and so this is I think a very well thought out solution to this problem, and hopefully we're pretty well taken care of it today.
Yes, this has been a long time coming and lots of work, lots of moving parts. And like Vance said, it took a lot of work to slow the parts down enough to fit together. So thank you everyone for the work done on this. And Pat, would you like to make a motion?
I would love to. I move to approve the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Albany and the North Albany County Service District effective September 21st, 2021.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Hallelujah.
Thank you, and thanks to Joe. I appreciate his comments. It's been a lot of work. The only other thing I'll add is that this IGA will go to the Albany City Council tomorrow night. They have a regular meeting, so they will vote on also approving the IGA tomorrow night. So I'm sure it'll be fine.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris, for all your help on this. Really,
thank you. It's been a team effort, so we're gonna all have to have a celebratory drink after this. So.
Celebratory glass of water. Sparkling water.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, well, the last item on the agenda for this is other. Does anyone have an other? Seeing none. So this meeting I can close. All right, we are closed, and yeah, let's go take a break, eat your lunch, and I will see everyone at 3:15 or earlier.